As you've heard on Bridge City News, Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 felony charges related to his hush money trial. Sentencing will take place next month. The former U.S. president could face fines and up to 4 years in jail per charge. Wow. Now, to talk about this in more detail is American correspondent and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, could Trump actually see jail time? If he does, what would that mean for the Republican Party heading into the federal election in November?
Well, that's a few steps ahead, right? So let's talk about this conviction. The fact that it's brought in over $50 million for Trump in terms of campaign donations. The fact that he was found guilty on all 34 charges, the case basically became a parody of itself. And I think that a lot of Americans are reacting in a way that was not expected, meaning this is in fact being seen by many as, politicizing the judicial system because it was all 34, because it is so extreme, and because his sentencing is 4 days before the convention. I mean, it all seems very much orchestrated to bring him down. Love him or hate him, if you believe he's guilty or not. It's just that there have been cases like this before. There have been cases where politicians actually use federal money to pay their hush money. Look, it's interesting how this is playing out in terms of its timing. Not only the case itself, but the fact that obviously we are in an election year. As you asked, the main question is, can he still become president? That's what everybody wants to know. He's obviously, I think they will first appeal. That's what we assumed before they came out with a verdict, but we'll see how that goes. The appeal goes. We'll see. He's a first-time offender. See, what they could pull to kind of get him off the hook a bit. But from what it looks like, there's still a clear path to the presidency, and the polls are showing that he is ahead in most of the swing states that would concern the Biden administration and the campaign going forward. So we shall see. This is not going to be a dull presidential election season, I'll tell you that much, Hal.
Lisa, U.S. President Joe Biden sent a proposal to Hamas to release the remaining Israeli captives and to end hostilities in Gaza once and for all. What do we know about this proposal?
The proposal, it's interesting because we're at a time where the Israelis are desperate to get the remaining hostages left, whomever may be left. I know a lot of them are not alive, and that will become not surprising, but of course disappointing to the families and to the Israeli government. It's been too long. The video that came out just a couple weeks ago about the women that are being raped, perhaps impregnated by Hamas terrorists, that kind of lit a fire under the Israeli government to do anything to bring them back. And that's the unfortunate part, because that anything means that Hamas will get the upper hand, will get the benefit of that desperation. It's a three-part deal, ending fighting for 6 weeks. Then we move into the first phase of the hostage release. Then you're talking about hundreds of Palestinian and Hamas prisoners being released. That is the potential of many more October 7th, which the Israelis and many others are concerned about. Obviously, nobody wants terrorists out on the streets. Well, perhaps some of the college students here in the United States do, but it's upsetting to see such division on something that is so clear. Terrorists kill innocent people who want freedom, people who are religious minorities, people who are gay, people who are writers, people who are rappers and musicians and dancers and everyone else. They're fixated on ending life, and unfortunately, this deal may go through, but again, we don't know how many of those hostages will make it back home safe and alive.
Yeah, praying that many of them will come back alive, absolutely. Lisa, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to make a record-breaking fourth address to U.S. Congress. Now, some leftist lawmakers in the United States said they would most likely boycott the event that's supposed to take place this summer over Israel's actions during the war in Gaza.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's those who may boycott the address that need to hear it the most. Look, it's not The thing that I warn people against is looking at Bibi Netanyahu as a left, right, or center politician. Yes, there is division in Israel. There was before October 7th, just like there is in the United States and there is in Canada. There's a left, there's a right. They're usually at odds with one another. But Bibi Netanyahu, in this instance, is fighting an existential war that any Israeli politician would have to fight. So when he comes to Congress, he's representing Israel's right to exist. He's not representing Israel's right or left or center. He is representing the country, and that is our main democratic ally in the Middle East. That's not going to come across that way. I know the media, the squad, the leftist politicians who do get too much airtime, they will spin this to be something that it's not, and align Bibi with Trump and whoever else they don't like. They may boycott. I know a lot of the cabinet members in Biden's administration have already quit on the job because of the Israel policy. I think for anybody who has studied, even taken one course in foreign policy, they will understand that, Israel is our ally. There's a reason why the West supports Israel and its right to exist, its right to defend itself against enemies who are our enemies as well. I hope that this is better presented to the American people and to our lawmakers that would give time to our ally Israel to make that address to Congress.
Lisa, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, not surprisingly, condemned an Israeli bill labeling UNRWA as a terrorist group. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, imagine. So it's interesting because the Qataris and the Saudis are two main players in the Middle East that have enjoyed Qatar for a longer period of time, Saudis more recently, playing both sides, meaning that they have aligned themselves with the United States, with Israel, being able to be that broker, being able to get courted for the Abraham Accords in the case of Saudi Arabia, or normalizing relations with Israel through the West. But they've also enjoyed, relationship with Iran's regime, with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and you see that with the Qataris giving money to those groups as well. Is it surprising that they're condemning Israel? No, it's more of a public stance, a position that they do take in order to find favor, again, with both sides. When push comes to shove, the Qataris and the Saudis, they want extremism out of the region. And when it comes to getting extremism out of the region, they have to support Israel in their endeavor because they're fighting a fight that they would also have to fight. Now, it's interesting because UNRWA, there's plenty of evidence to show that those UNRWA members that are getting, again, money from the UN, getting money from the United States and Canada and many other countries, they're using that money to support Hamas. They're actual Hamas operatives that were working for UNRWA, and that has been proven, and that's why a lot of the funding has been cut from UNRWA. But to have the Saudis and Qataris come out with this kind of position, they've caught themselves in this kind of push and pull, and I think that just shows that. I don't think it really shows more than that.
Lebanon's Hezbollah hit northern Israel with around 40 rockets and a number of barrages on Sunday, surprisingly only injuring 2 people because the Iron Dome is doing its job. Lisa, this after the Israeli military carried out a wave of overnight strikes against the terror group.
Yes, so this is the trickle that we always ask. Is this the escalation that we have awaited with Hezbollah? So as we know, the Israeli army is fighting a few fronts right now within the West Bank, in Rafah, Gaza. It's waiting and trying to calculate when the front from the north, from southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah is located, when that front will begin. Again, it's a question of when and not if. They know that Iran's regime is hell-bent on using Hezbollah from Lebanon to fire into Israel. All the weapons are pointed that way. And let's remember, Hezbollah is the more well-endowed, it's the richest, it's the most capable terror proxy of Iran's regime that was founded in 1980, right after the government came into topple the Shah and come into Iran. So that will present a bigger challenge to Israel than we've seen so far. But again, since the Israelis are anticipating this, they are taking preemptive shots at major figures, major weapons hubs in southern Lebanon.
An Israeli MMA fighter has apparently been deported from Ukraine after an alleged assassination attempt. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy story. But look, we're seeing all kinds of things. Last week there were, several attempts at bombing synagogues all around the world. I don't know if you heard about the Mexico City Israel embassy. There was a huge fire that protesters put on over there in a protest against Israel and policies in Mexico. I mean, who would have thought? And here you have an MMA fighter representing Israel, an assassination attempt on him. Thank God he was able to get out of the country in time and safely. But it really goes to show that Israelis now, what and the question then becomes, what does one Israeli individual or a Jew living in any part of the world have to do with any policies in the Middle East when there is this kind of hostility and threats against Jews and Israelis traveling all throughout the world, in this case, for sports? So, thank you for covering this story, because I think that it really does symbolize a much bigger trend that is not being reported by the mainstream media, and really points to the anti-Semitism that has become the most horrific side effect to all of this.
Lisa, the Paris Summer Olympics begin next month, and a report from UPI says French police foiled an Islamist-style attack on the Games. Authorities said the 18-year-old Chechen national planned to target a venue where soccer matches will be played.
Right. And not surprising how there is a fixation on these types of symbolic places, venues, events in the West, whether it's in Europe, the United States, whether it's a music concert or place where business is conducted, or in this case, obviously, sports that kind of symbolize the global stage in that capacity. There was another report that we had at the Foreign Desk last week talking about the Iran regime doubling down its efforts to find terrorists on the ground in Europe to carry out its dirty work. Now, this could be in the Olympics, synagogues, embassies, individuals. No one's safe. But also how this goes to show how big these terror networks are and how easily they're able to find these useful idiots on the ground to do their dirty work anywhere they go. So when we talk about the war in the Middle East, it is creeping up on us at home, whether you're in Canada or the United States or in Paris trying to go to a soccer match. It's not safe. And this is why it is so important to understand that when you take a position to fight terrorism against Hamas, against this Chechnyan one-off, terrorist in Paris, against Hezbollah, against Iran's regime, it is not a position of, geopolitics, but really one against freedom, against being safe, against, really eradicating and rooting out terrorism wherever it may rear its ugly head. So I think there's going to have to be much more security. I think the French are in for a big wake-up call. They have had in the past, as you know, major attacks in Paris, and I think that they will have to do their due diligence for the Olympics.
We have some business news to discuss as well today. OPEC agreed on Sunday to extend most of its deep oil output cuts well into next year as the group really seeks to shore up the market amid growth, high interest rates, and rising rival U.S. production.
Oh, yes. We'll see that here at the pumps in the United States, also an election year. This is a very big deal. I think the Biden administration will have to take some sort of action. I know that they've also cut out output. So it's interesting to see the issues that come up in our election here. I know I have seen major polls say that the number one issue right now will be the border. And I'm sure that inflation, gas prices, food prices will become a major issue for Americans as well.
Political reporter and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles.
Thank you so much.